Hey, Cameron here with the Seabutters Tech Channel, and if you've paid any attention to my channel over the years, you'll know that I cover Surface devices a lot. It's been over a decade that I've been doing so, and we've had this big launch of the new Copilot PC, the Surface Pro, which is, how could Microsoft make the naming conventions any more confusing by suddenly having the Surface Pro that's designated by 12 because it's a 12-inch display, but yet the 13-inch the 13-inch version is the Surface Pro 11th, but it's got a 13-inch screen. And I don't know if this is 11th gen or not, but it's the Surface Pro 12-inch version. So I don't know what they're doing with their naming conventions, but it's got to stop, guys. That's all I have to say about it. And I really debated covering this device at all just because I personally have no interest in a Snapdragon Surface Pro. Personally, I've covered it. I've owned them. I have one sitting back there because I want to do some tests on it. I've already done a lot of videos with it, and what we got with the Surface Pro 12-inch is basically an even more chopped down Snapdragon. It has 8 cores instead of the 10 or 12 cores that you might have on the Surface Pro 11th gen. I want to take a look at it with you. I do like a couple of things. There's been a lot of changes to the hardware, which may be indicative of what may be to come with Surface devices. I'm also disappointed that we didn't get any Surface Laptop Studio 3 announcement. So it's possible that we've lost the Surface Book and now we've lost the Surface Laptop Studio. So that could be the case. Maybe they just are going to refresh it a little bit later. I don't know, but that's what I was hoping to see from this Microsoft announcement, was maybe a new Surface Laptop Studio that's been refreshed with newer chips, which would be amazing. But no, we have the Surface Pro, and I'm not even going to touch on the Surface Laptop. I'm just going to talk about the Surface Pro 11th gen. Not 11th gen. Surface Pro with a 12-inch screen. I don't even know what to call these things. It's so funny. Let's take a look here. Surface Pro now in 12 inches. And it's really funny because 12 and 13, it's not that big of a difference. However, I do think a 12-inch is probably more manageable for those of you who like to use it in terms of a tablet. So there is that. But let's talk about what we're seeing here in terms of the hardware. So for one thing I really like about it is that it now has a place to drop a pen on the back, has a little pad. That pad will charge it, and it will also keep that pen really secure. You never had a way to do that, at least with the newer Surface Pros. The Surface Pro used to have a pen that attached on the side, and then when they moved it to the keyboard, there was no way to just have the tablet and the pen. So I think this is a great move. I really like that they've done that. Another glaring thing that we're looking at here, so we have lost the Surface Connect port. So we only have those USB-C ports, which I liked having the Surface Connect port on the device, but I do not blame them for removing it. In all practicality, I almost never plugged it into the Surface Connect. I always plugged it into my USB power packs using USB-C, and I am guilty of not taking advantage of the Surface Connect port, even though it's technically, maybe a more... Well, it's better that it's magnetic and that it pulls away easily without breaking your stuff. But I never used it either, so I can't blame them for dropping that, especially on a more budget device. We'll talk about the price in a minute here, but let's see if we can find the 12-inch keyboard. There we go, right there. It does not do the lift thing. Let me back this back out. So on on the Surface Pro 13, you have the keyboard that goes like this, which it lifts the keyboard so you get kind of an angle on it. And if you want to, you can still pull it down like this so it's completely flat on the desk, but I don't find that as ergonomic as popping it up like this. So we've lost that feature, but for the size and for it seems that they aren't going to be, well, they're focusing a lot more on having people actually use it as a tablet more, which makes sense. It's the lighter device. I think that's fine. I don't see that being too big of an issue. Talking about performance, you'll note that they're comparing to Surface Pro 9, not Surface Pro 10 or the Intel version of the Surface Pro 11th gen. And they're doing that for a reason, because this is not faster than those devices necessarily. 16 hours of battery life remains to be seen. We have the stunning hands-on display. There is no OLED option here. Like I say, it's still got that 45 tops Snapdragon device, just with 8 cores rather than 10 plus. So yeah, I like the colors. Let's start building and look at the colors and the pricing and options and configurations. So that 12-inch comes in, you've got your violet, you've got your ocean color, which I like that. I like that color. I would get that over the silver any day. There's the regular silver that most people always see. So the colors are kind of nice. However, my absolute favorite is for sure the sapphire on the 13-inch model. I really like that one. I think it looks really sharp. I wish they would have had that. The violet's good, but it's, you know, not my first choice. So I would get Ocean if I was going to get one of these to the 12-inch. And I am logged in with student discounts. That's what you're seeing here is a little bit of a discount. So let's go off the regular pricing as we talk about this. But $759, how does that price sound? Well, it's great that they are offering this at a much lower price point than the 13-inch model. They needed a more budget option out there. But if you compare this to something like the Surface Go, the Surface Go started at $400. So you already have a huge markup to $800-ish. So it's almost double the price of even a Surface Go. That said, the Surface Go was only 10 inches. This is 12. It had a more limited resolution. This has a better resolution. So it is a more expensive device. You can't compare it directly to the Surface Go, even though it's the spiritual successor to the Surface Go, but it definitely is not the Surface Go. So what about options? So you've got a 256. You're going to get the same processor no matter what you choose here. So it's basically a selection of color and 256 versus 512. The 512 version is $900 versus $800. So that's actually fairly reasonable. It's not a huge markup. They all have 16 gigs of RAM, which I think is good. So that's nice. That's nice. Let's look at the more technical specifications. So here we go. We've got on the 12-inch device, you get one option, the X Plus, 8 cores. You get the NPU. They all have 45 tops. It's a Qualcomm Adreno GPU no matter what you choose. And you only get a 16 gigabyte option. There's no stepping up to 32 or 64 gigabytes here. It is what it is. 16, especially with the Snapdragon devices that you can't... I don't want to say you can't do as much, but some of the larger applications you wouldn't be running anyways on this device, as I'll put it that way. But let's go ahead and look at the touchscreen. Of course, you're going to have a great touchscreen on this. It's a Surface device. They always do. You're going to have a 3:2 aspect ratio. You always do. The resolution is 220 ppi. That's a little bit lower than the 13-inch version. The 13-inch version has, I think, 267 ppi. And our resolution is kind of a weird 2196 by 1464. That is not low resolution by any means. On a 12-inch screen, that's going to look absolutely great. And your dynamic refresh rate, you get up to 90 hertz. It's not 120 like you get on the 13-inch. However, that's not really a problem. I think 90 is perfectly adequate. In fact, it may save you a little bit of battery life, and it's a nice little compromise between 60 and 120. 60 would be awful. 90 is not too bad. 120 is obviously better, but 90 hertz is quite a big jump over 60. It's like going from, if 60 hertz is 1, 90 hertz is 1.5. So it's quite a big jump. One thing I don't like here is that it says strengthened glass display and not Corning Gorilla Glass 5. I don't think that's a big problem, but this one right here, the SDR with 400 nits, is not great. It's not awful, and it's probably better than a lot of budget things out there. It's really not bad, but coming from the HDR like 900 and even tested higher than that nits of the Surface Pro 13-inch, it's definitely a little bit of a step down in terms of brightness. So if you use your device outside quite a bit, stepping up to the 13-inch version might be a good idea. You also get an OLED display on the 13-inch. You don't get any OLED on the Surface Pro 12. So that's definitely a difference, and maybe it's not a problem, but it's definitely worth noting. Let's talk about battery life. So battery life comes down to the number of cores, for one. When you only have 8 cores, even if you max them out, you're going to use less power than 12. That's why we're seeing on the battery life that it's saying, hey, you could get 16 hours of local video playback. The display is a little smaller. The chip on it uses a lot less power. It has less cores. You get slightly less performance, but nothing that's too bad. So it actually shows it's getting better battery life than the 13-inch models do. That could be true, but if you actually look deeper into the specs, it's actually a 38 watt-hour battery, where the 13-inch version is a 48 watt-hour or a 53 watt-hour if you have the OLED model. So it does have a smaller battery, which of course it does. It's a smaller device. It's thinner. There's no fan on this device. So that's a perk for some people. It may or may not be a perk for you if you really load the device. And whether that actually makes a difference remains to be seen. Whether it's going to throttle because it doesn't have a fan, that could very well be the case. Snapdragon does perform quite well even with less watts. But yeah, we'll just have to see how well it does and see if I doubt it will overheat. I'm sure they've engineered it, but I've said that in the past. And, of course I sell my Surface fans on the side because the Intel versions of the Surface Pro can definitely benefit because they throttle if they get too hot. The Snapdragon may start throttling a bit if it gets too hot in this version because there is no fan. It will be interesting to see if that's the case. So what does this mean for the future of Surface devices? Now, there's the Surface Pro 13 in both Intel and Snapdragon flavors. I doubt there's going to be an Intel version of the Surface Pro 12-inch version. I wonder how they're going to, it's been such a, they've been launching Surface Pro devices like crazy. That we had the 9, and then suddenly they announced the 10 just for business, and then they had the 11th gen just with Snapdragon, but then they swung back and said, oh wait, here's an Intel version of the 11th gen, and now suddenly we've got this 12-inch version. So it has been Surface after Surface after Surface. I wonder if they're going to consolidate this and have the 13-inch version be Intel and the 12-inch version be the Snapdragon. It makes a little bit of sense. The Snapdragon's, I hate to say this, but it's a glorified phone chip, right? Like it's obviously it's much better than that, but essentially that's what it is. And of course, the ARM chip pairs much better with a 12-inch chassis than the 13-inch one. So if they're going to differentiate and have the 12-inch be Snapdragon and the 13-inch be Intel, that would be interesting. I don't know if they'll do that. That's pure speculation on my part, and I could see reasons for them to do or not do that. But it is very confusing for the consumer, and I will say that it is a little bit crazy that you have the Surface Pro for business in 11th gen with the Intel chip, which has much better graphics than the Snapdragon version. I mean, we're talking like almost double the performance of the Lunar Lake graphics over the Snapdragon, plus bells and whistles that you don't get, which I'm going to do a video on that in the future. But I don't know. I think it would be a nice way to differentiate and just say, oh, the 12-inch one, Snapdragon, 13-inch one, Intel, comes with more bells and whistles, has a little bit better performance, especially in the graphics. I think that's an easier sell to people to say, oh, the 12-inch has this and the 13-inch has this, rather than say, here's a 12-inch and here's a 13-inch that has either Intel or Snapdragon. You get what I'm saying here. Anyways, will I be picking up a 12-inch Surface Pro? I really don't think so, unless I find a great deal on some open box one somewhere. And then I may get it just to test my Surface fan and see if it throttles, see if it has any issues, and see if the fan does anything for it. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the Surface Pro 12-inch version. One of the next videos that I've been working on that I'll be releasing soon will be comparing, again, I keep doing this, I'll be comparing an Intel Surface Pro to a Snapdragon Surface Pro and show kind of the pros and cons when it comes to graphics and gaming, because there's a huge difference there, and I think people need to be aware of it. So anyway, stay tuned for that video on optimizing your Surface Pro for gaming, and we will see you on the next video.